Hi friends, welcome back to Brilliant Blue Reviews. My name is Heather, and in today's video I'm going to be doing a review of the latest book that I just finished, which is Homicide in the Indian Hills by Erica Ruth Neubauer. Now this is a book in a series which I started a few years ago. This is the 6th book in the series. Now, she did also have a novella, Murder Under the Mistletoe, which actually came before this. They didn't have it at my library or anywhere in my library system. And I don't often read, like 2.5 or whatever novellas like that are kind of squeezed in that aren't necessarily critical to the series, that they're just kind of extra for fun. And so I wasn't even planning on reading that one, but I discovered after I checked this book out from the library that the novella is at the end of this book. And I was actually very pleased to realize that because this one looked really thick and I thought this was going to take me forever, but it actually didn't. I finished it in a decent amount of time. So this is how it divides up. This much was the actual novel, Homicide in the Indian Hills, and this much is the novella, Murder Under the Mistletoe. I've got my bookmark right where they split. So once I realized that, I felt a lot less intimidated by the length of this book. This book actually is 277 pages. So there are 37 chapters and an epilogue. Now in the novella, Murder Under the Mistletoe, which I will make a review of that too, but I'm going to just tell you right now since I have it right here, it's going to be hard to, I'm going to have to do some math. So it starts on page 285, 20 chapters, and it ends on 424. So it's 150-ish pages basically about. So I'm going to be reading that next, maybe. I might read the other book I already have from the library that I've already started actually. I don't usually do that where I overlap things, but I wanted to start this one. And so this is a little preview for you of what I'm going to be reading next, and that is Dear Miss Lake by A.J. Pierce. This book is also in a series, and it's the Dear Mrs. Bird series, which is set in World War II in England, London basically. And this is the, I think, 4th book in the series. Yeah, there was Dear Mrs. Bird, Yours Cheerfully, and Mrs. Porter Calling. And I really enjoyed this series too because I'm a big World War II buff. I am probably actually going to read this next, and then I will go back and read the novella because I have this book checked out until I can probably renew it one more time. I can keep this into September. Even though it's a 14-day at my library, nobody is waiting for this book. And so at our library, at least, when a book has a limited checkout time like that, as long as no one has it on hold and is waiting for it, you can renew it. So I can have this book up to 9 weeks like a normal book that's just a regular checkout. This one, however, I can't renew because there is someone waiting for it. And this was also a 14-day checkout. So I have to read this one first because this one's going to need to go back before I have to have this one back. So let's talk about Homicide in the Indian Hills. This is the next story in the continuing saga of Jane Wunderly and her now husband, Redvers. He just goes by Redvers, and actually he has a really weird last name. It's really dorky, and so they never use it. And Wunderly is actually her married name from her first husband who died and who was also abusive and horrible, and she hated him. He was never in the series. They just talk about him because he was in the past, and she was very reluctant to even have a relationship or fall in love or get married again. I can completely relate. But once she met Redvers, they totally fell in love. Over the first 3 or 4 books, their relationship develops over time. But Redvers' last name is something weird and dorky, which I can't remember right now. And so everybody just calls him Redvers. And they know she's Jane Wunderly and they call her Mrs. Wunderly. But because they know they're married, people call him Mr. Wunderly. I love the relationship between Redvers and Jane. That's been my favorite part of this series of books. It has been the developing relationship between Redvers and Jane. And in fact, in previous reviews that I've done from this series, I know when I did my review of Secrets of a Scottish Isle, I talked about how I was disappointed, I think, that Redvers wasn't in it as much. He didn't have as big of a role and it was just kind of more Jane by herself. There's other books where they're together a lot, and there's a lot of stuff going on with them, and I like that better. These books are set in the 1920s, and they're all over the world. They take place in all different countries. It started out in Egypt. She was with her aunt, and they were visiting the pyramids and stuff. And it's Murder at the Mina House. And then Wedgefield Manor, that one takes place in the UK. Danger on the Atlantic takes place on a ship as they're crossing the Atlantic to go back to Jane is American. Redvers is British. They're going back to meet Jane's father. And then Intrigue in Istanbul is in Istanbul, Turkey. Secrets of a Scottish Isle is obviously in Scotland. The novella Murder Under the Mistletoe, I don't know where that one takes place. So it would have been, they got married at the end of Secrets of a Scottish Isle. So I think that the novella is actually before that one. Oh, maybe it's before Secrets of a Scottish Isle. Because she refers to him in that one as at the beginning. I just kind of peeked at it. She refers to him in Murder Under the Mistletoe as her fiance. So I kind of think it's set between Intrigue in Istanbul and Secrets of a Scottish Isle, I think. I'll have to clarify that when I read it, but because they get married in a little Scottish church, a little chapel at the end of Secrets of a Scottish Isle. And now this one, Homicide in the Indian Hills, they kind of refer to it as their honeymoon, even though it's not their honeymoon. It's not like they're going on vacation. Redvers is basically a spy. He doesn't have an official title for the crown, so for the British government. Jane doesn't even completely know what he does exactly, but she asks him a little bit more in this book, like, what exactly is your job? And so he does secret stuff for the crown, for the British government. And that's why they're traveling all over the world all the time, and that's what he was doing when they met in Egypt and everything. So he's always doing stuff like that, and then she kind of gets to tag along, basically. And what ends up happening is somebody gets murdered. Somebody gets murdered, and then somehow Jane kind of injects herself into the investigation of the murder. She knew the person or whatever, and somehow she gets like all involved, and then Redvers is kind of involved, and so it's like that. It reminds me a lot of another series that I really liked. Well, two other series that I really liked, which were the ones written by Ashley Weaver, which I've also talked about on this channel and reviewed several of those books. They're historical fiction novels set in a specific time period, and they involve a kind of fun couple that are either married or getting to know each other, thrown together kind of thing. And in this case, both, because they end up getting married. And they kind of have a fun relationship back and forth, so there's a little bit of romance, there's a little bit of sexual tension, humorous banter, things like that I really enjoy in a novel. And so the combination of it being like a murder mystery and that whole relationship dynamic between the two main characters is something I really enjoy about this series and those other series that I mentioned. I would have to say this is probably kind of my favorite kind of book. Historical fiction novel, murder mystery with a relationship thing. That's kind of like all of my favorite things in a book. So this one takes place in India, and they actually go to a town. It's shortened. It's Ooty, Ooty, but it's short for Uttarakhand. It says it's a hill station. And now this would have been when India was still a British colony. So the British government still controlled India. And that's a very big aspect of the plot of the book. And they mentioned Gandhi. So like they were going to meet with him or something. And so this is kind of around the time of the Indian, revolutionary action toward wanting to get their independence from Great Britain. So that's kind of what's going on with the plot. There's a whole bunch of like political stuff that I thought might kind of slow me down and be boring and drag out or something, but it actually wasn't. I mean, it's definitely in there. It's a major part of the plot and like why people get murdered and stuff, because there's actually 2 murders. But it doesn't drag the book down. It doesn't slow it down. It goes at a really good pace. It's still fast-paced and interesting and intriguing and stuff. And thankfully, the political stuff, she keeps it enough to a minimum. Like you just kind of get the basics. That's like all you really need to know without kind of dragging you into this whole deep thing of like the history of India or anything like that. There's a good number of interesting characters that they meet. the governor, his wife, the governor's mistress, her cousin, their servant, like their guy their steward who kind of like takes care of them in the place that they're staying, has kind of an important role, Sasmit. And then there's like a few different political people that are there. And then like these people that are working behind the scenes trying to help with the effort to have India reestablish its independence from Great Britain. So that's kind of what's going on. And the people that get murdered have to do with that whole thing. And the one thing that they talk about, which is kind of interesting, is the danger of tigers. There's a tiger on the cover in the area where they are, and how Jane like isn't supposed to walk alone at night because there's tigers. And so she's worried about that all the time. Like, am I going to get attacked by a tiger? And the first murder in the book, I will kind of little bit of a, not really a spoiler, but they say that the person was killed by a tiger. But then Redvers and Jane actually go to the morgue and look at the body and realize that it's a cover-up and they were actually not killed by a tiger. So that's kind of how it starts. Is it sounds like it's just this horrible accident thing that happened, that this particular person got attacked and killed by a tiger. But then Jane and Redvers don't think that sounds right, and so they decide to take a second look and kind of get into the investigation of it, because the police are very corrupt and are not doing anything. And so they really have to kind of do this investigation on their own, because not only are the police corrupt, but the governor, where they are, actually reassigns the detective that was supposed to be investigating right after the second death. So he just like gets sent away. So nobody's really looking into these. They're disguised as a tiger attack and a suicide. And they're actually both homicides, as in the title, Homicide. So it's a very good story. I really enjoyed it. I read it at a quick pace. There's a really nice amount of like romance and stuff between Redvers and Jane, because they just got married, you know, kind of enjoying each other at the beginning of their marriage. And so it was good. I gave it 4 stars, and I would definitely recommend it. And I probably liked it more than the Scottish Isle one, actually, because there was more interaction, I think, with Redvers and Jane in this one. So 4 stars from me for Homicide in the Indian Hills by Erica Ruth Neubauer. This just came out not too long ago, just a couple months ago maybe. Again, this is the 6th book in Jane Wunderly series. So if you enjoy that type of book, you definitely want to start with the first one, which is Murder at the Mina House, which is the one set in Egypt. But if you enjoy that type of thing, I think you'd really like this series. And like I said, I will be reading the novella, Murder Under the Mistletoe, which is found in the back of this book. Let me know if you've seen that novella, like actually published on its own, like its own copy. Like, can you check it out from your library, or have you seen it in bookstores or anything? Because the only place I've seen it was here in the back of this book, which kind of seemed like a strange place for them to put it, actually, because it doesn't fit, you know, after this story. It's kind of like it's saying, hey, this is next, like a preview of the next book, but it's not. It's actually like before. So I don't know why they put it in the back of this one. It's kind of a weird publishing decision. Watch for my review of that, of Murder Under the Mistletoe, and watch for my upcoming review of Dear Miss Lake. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.